Barndi Mungal, Indu, Warawara, Karu, Tayai Gumpa, Inida Minangu, Iningu Ilyamara, Inyaru, Iningu Winera Yulyala, Iningu Gurugala, Nanagari, Wulanyu, Ala Uturutu, Iwara Wulanga, Iningu Wujunu, Nadia Yalanyu. Good morning, everyone. The words I've spoken today is a revival of sleeping tongue, the Wilanyu language. Barndi Mungal, good morning, my mum's language, Wadri. Today, we all meet to have a voice, to make change and be part of creating strong, solid futures for our mob.
We come today first and foremost as Aboriginal people representing ourselves and our families, not an organisation. As a Mulgana woman travelling here from Carnarvon, I look forward to hearing about what is happening about the region and joining discussions on possible solutions we can present tomorrow to our invited guest.
Today is for us, the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, and our discussions will focus on issues and concerns within the Aboriginal community within the Yamatji region.
I'm here to give an update on the Aboriginal cultural heritage legislation since the last Yamatji on Country meeting in October 2021. So what's happening at the moment is there's several important pieces of regulation. As I said, these will actually fill in the detail that as to how the Act is going to actually work. There are guidelines being prepared as to who knowledge holders are and how to find out who knowledge holders are. There are also guidelines being prepared about activity categories. So what counts as minimum activity, what counts as low impact, what counts as high level activities. And we think, well, you know, it all depends on where it is. I mean, a bit of rock chipping may be low impact in some areas, but what if your rocks that you're chipping have you know, drawings on them? I mean, those are obviously, you know, if you're talking about rock art, well, then that becomes very significant. So we're saying you can't just look at the level of activity, and you've got to also look at the area.
How many fines have actually been laid by the state government in relation to destruction of Aboriginal heritage in WA?
I can't remember off the top of my head, but there have only been a handful of prosecutions in the past, and in the past the total figure for penalty was so low that it really didn't mean anything.
I'm also doing work with this group called the First Nations Heritage Protection Alliance. So that body was set up after the destruction at Juukan Gorge, and it was set up in response to that destruction to try and lobby for change at the national level around cultural heritage. So consultations are taking place in two stages, stage 1 and stage 2. Now, coming out of stage 1, there were two things produced. One was a directions report. The second document to come out of that was called the options paper. So that options paper now narrows down 3 options for Commonwealth reform. And it's those 3 options we'll really be going out to speak to people about, to see what they think and what they think will make a difference to improve cultural heritage reform across the country.
Is there the Heritage Bill, is there a national one and a state one?
So the federal legislation at the moment, you can really only access it when your state legislation has failed. So if you go through all the hurdles of the state legislation and the state won't protect it, then you can go to the Commonwealth and try and get an order for protection.
We're going to break up women's group, men's group. The young students, female students, could go with the women's group. The young males could go with the men's group. So now we're going to combine the 2 conversations that we had.
More time on country is to learn more about it, to learn, you know, learn the hunting, learn fishing, you know, learn your language. Respecting the land just means just respecting not only the land but your elders, And by respecting your elders, you're respecting your culture.
But the buddy, I think that is a good idea. We have a buddy for every person who's going into schools to look after the person while while the parents are not there.
Our call to action from the women has been around housing and accommodation, education, family and domestic violence, justice, employment and training, and most importantly, a really robust review around service providers, agencies and the way that they deliver.
When we had our ladies talk over this side and the men's had their separate meeting, I think that was really beneficial for us to realise that we share very similar the needs and concerns we have in the community.
From the hill and the crops plain, and I close my eyes and I'm standing in a boat on the sea again, and I'm holding a long dirty wheel, and it feels I'm close now to where it must be. My home is waiting for me. My home, my home, my home is waiting for me.
On behalf of everyone that was here yesterday, I'd just like to present the call to action statement that we all came up with and put together, and I'd just like to present that to the Minister today. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Wayne, and thanks for that, Minister, for accepting that. And I'm very positive that you're going to find it interesting. You're going to read through it, and you're going to give us some feedback on it. The kids are going to take over the stage now, so if you just want to take your seat, they're going to introduce themselves and they're going to talk about the topics that they discussed yesterday.
We are here today to present to you all our thoughts on issues and concerns that are occurring in the community with young Aboriginal people living in the Yamatji region.
We feel racism has affected us all in one way or another.
Underage drinking and drug use is an issue in our community.
We feel that the lack of culture for our young people today is an issue because some of us don't know who we are or where we come from. Our culture has almost been lost.
An issue amongst young Indigenous people today is online bullying, in particular, yarn fight pages. These pages contain explicit pictures, rumours and fights. These pages cause shame and disrespect against members who contribute to the bullying.
We also thought social media giants should take some responsibility since they are the ones allowing these pages to be open online.
Our home life shapes who we are and how well we succeed. So this is an issue because if there's not much encouragement happening at home with appropriate role models or a safe place to study or sleep, or if domestic violence is happening, then all of this affects our education and overall health and well-being.
This forum has given us the opportunity to raise greater awareness that these issues are happening in our community. It affects all of us in one way or another.
There were some very strong messages from the youth in this community about what was important to them, things such as racism, discrimination, and also their cyberbullying and what happens online. Obviously that's something that's new for the Indigenous community, and it's not unique to the Indigenous community, but it affects them, and we need to, as a community, need to find ways to try and address that, to make their community safe, and of course that includes their online space as well, making that safe for them.
Through our discussions held yesterday, we have identified and co-designed our call to action statement. Each of our nominated spokespersons will now present these key regional priorities in detail.
Regional and remote communities across the Midwest, the Murchison and the Gascoyne regions are experiencing housing shortages, overcrowding, homelessness at alarming rates.
To make sure Aboriginal people are placed in a good position to maintain employment, training and economic development opportunities, we have identified investment is required to build our capabilities and capacity to participate in our local economy as employee or business operators.
So our call of actions to the police to address and the justice concerns. Support police officers. We don't want you fellas to say that we support you what you do. You need to come support us. The justice staff to engage in our communities, events, building positive relationships with local community members. I'm talking about elders, and you see all them kids here today, they need that too.
Our call to action to address our health and well-being needs across the regions are: 1, have a cultural, secure, rehabilitation and family healing centre on country. 2, reform the Mental Health Act. 3, increase permanent employment positions for the First Nation people in the health sector. 4, ensure medical staff undertake place-based cultural awareness training.
So our call of action to address to the education needs of our highly disengaged children and young people are: integrated First Nations culture, heritage, language and history back into that curriculum. Do not ignore that. It has to come back into the curriculum.
I guess why I came here was to also come back to country, because this is my country, and also learn if they're still struggling with the same educational issues down here as we're facing up there. And I think we're all travelling right across the board with the same issues of education. And it's sad to see that our kids now are not making it to high school being able to read. Not being able to read and write. This is 2022. So something has to change for our kids in the education system.
Discrimination and racism remain an ongoing issue that many First Nation people still experience today.
Improve ethical, cultural and morals standards and censorship across all forms of media, especially social media.
Become an ally that influences and facilitates opportunities to strengthen relationships between First Nation people and wider communities.
It is an honour to have you here today. I would like to give you a copy of what we said and hope you consider that we, the younger generation, for you to take notice of what is happening in our community. Thank you.
I think Des said, powerful, truthful, and take notice of what they are saying. Des, I totally agree with you. It was powerful, it was truthful, and I will be taking notice of what was said. So the areas of racism, housing, accommodation, police and justice, education, employment training, economic development, health and well-being, all very important. That was what I was trying to say. As Minister of Aboriginal Affairs, I don't necessarily have direct involvement in all those matters, but as a Minister of Aboriginal Affairs, I have responsibility to facilitate discussion in how it affects Aboriginal people in those areas, but I'll be taking this back to speak to my ministerial colleagues, and I know Lara will also be speaking to the people that should be spoken to. And I think the community would be inspired that they are the next generation of leaders, and everything they said is real to their lives, and I'm really, really keen to listen to them a bit more and work with them and work with the government to ensure that we can reach solutions on some of those very pressing issues.
one solution, and it's been raised again today, and I think it's something that I'm going to be, I know I will be taking back, particularly to the Minister for Education, is around culture and language introduced into our schools from primary school throughout, not just for Indigenous students, but for everybody, for non-Indigenous students, because I think closing the gap in racism would potentially start just there.
One particular presentation that I really enjoyed was the young people who were really speaking from the heart, and lots of things that were really important to them that we need to really address, because we can't have our young people feeling that way, and I really want to make sure that we can do something to change things.
There has been established a referendum working group which is advising directly the Australian Government in relation to the way to move forward. And the referendum will be quite clearly a very simple question. It won't go to the really strong detail about what the voice looks like, but it will actually ask the question whether there should be a voice to Parliament.
I think an annual event would be awesome in the help of growth and building that relationship, because we can meet each year and we can work on those issues that we're working on today, and to see how we're progressing every year. And new challenges may arise, but if we tackle them every year, I think that'll be great.
I was heartened by how positive people were. Even though the youth raised a lot of issues that were concern to them, they're really keen on not just talking, but having actions for the solutions to the issues that they raised. So really positive and uplifted by today's proceedings.